Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Quality of Life Radio, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
The gong has spoken. Happy Wellness Wednesday, everybody. It's Thanksgiving Eve, November 21st, 2018, and welcome to Big Blend Radio's Quality of Life show, streaming live from Tucson, Arizona, with Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith. We're the mother-daughter travel team and publishers of the digital interactive Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, as well as Parks and Travel magazine. You can see them both at BigBlendMagazines.com. I'm excited. We're going into a park tomorrow, Nancy.
I can't wait.
I know. That's how we spend Thanksgiving, out hiking and doing things, getting out in nature. I'm very excited about today's show. We have Dr-Beth-Ricanati joining us. She is the author of the new, and I'm saying must-read book, Braided-A-Journey-of-a-Thousand-Challahs. It is out on Amazon, all stores where you can get books, good books, or you can go to her website, which I encourage you to do. She's got some great videos up there as well, housecallsforwellness.com, and excited to have her join us to talk about the book, talk about balance in life and health. Dr. Ricanati, welcome. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm terrific. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
We're both excited. I have been reading Braided, and I didn't know I was going to be into reading about bread, but Nancy she's into baking bread, and
so much fun.
I just want to say though, it's so interesting because your book really goes into wellness, and it's your personal story as well as there's like a fire that you have as an individual, like a passion, and it's so interesting. Reading about you going from women's marches to going into, becoming a doctor and studying, and then you're zen with bread. It's like, how do you balance all that? And is it the bread that brings you this balance?
That is such a great question. It's the making of the bread that has brought me so much balance. About 10 years ago when I started, I was in a stressed out, crazy place in my life. We had young children. I was working at a teaching hospital. I was trying to do it all and be it all, and that's just not healthy for most of us, and certainly it wasn't for me. And then I discovered challah, or maybe challah discovered me. I don't know, but 6 ingredients in a bowl, I was hooked. I was just hooked that day, the first time I made the bread. And when I took those lopsided loaves out of the oven a couple hours later, and that smell, I don't know if you bake bread the way, but that when you open that oven door and you're assaulted by that incredible aroma, it has stuck with me, and it turned our house into a home. It was magical.
Oh, wow.
There's something about the kneading of the bread. Like I had, the recipes I got, I was really thrilled. Like I was doing the traditional kneading of the dough, and then I was really thrilled when I found a 5-minute bread recipe where you didn't have to knead the dough, and you mix it all together and you put it in the fridge, and then 3 days later it would still rise, which really freaked me out because I thought it would only rise if you and all that, but the connection wasn't there because I didn't get to knead the dough, and it took me a few times to realize I missed the one essential ingredient about the kneading of the dough.
Right. You just stop. When you're there with your hands in the dough, you're not answering a text or you're checking your email or picking up the kids' toys. You're just there, and you can knead for your needs and just be in the moment. It's fantastic.
Watching cats, cats are the most amazing, interesting creatures. They do cat yoga in the sunshine.
Yeah, they do.
And they stretch, and and
they need.
And I've realized I want to become a cat because they know how to stretch. They understand, and they also know when to say no. And and reading your book, I'm like, she's a cat. She's Catwoman, because you're kneading, and you know how cats suddenly do that. They sharpen their claws. They do this kneading thing, and when they want love and attention, they'll come. They will come to you. Excuse me. There is no going to them unless it's an orange cat, but the Garfield style. But they come to you, and then they get all purry, and then they start kneading. So there's something interesting about the kneading of bread, the dough, I should say, and cats. I'm just saying.
I think that's a really cool analogy.
Yeah, well, they like yoga. There's yoga, but this goes to mindfulness. And, you know, Nancy and I travel to national park units. We're on this quest to visit every single unit of the national park system, and there's 417 today.
Oh my gosh.
And that number keeps growing, or sometimes, you never know, goes away.
Yeah.
I won't get political, but anyway, we're out there trying to document all of them and the communities and have that connection. And what's interesting going into this, we were traveling for 3 years. We're about to do it again full time. And when we were traveling to national parks, we realized there was this disconnect of people thinking that when they were if you go to a national park, you need to be an athlete. You need to be able to climb a mountain, go backpacking overnight, and sleep with the wolves and the bears and everything. And that's really not true. National parks and park units have, you know, pretty much a lot of them have accessible trails. Not every single one. It just depends on each one. But so we started a Facebook group called 1 Hour Walk, just about getting people to just take that little step. You know, once a week, take a 1 hour walk.
So important.
Yeah, and so wouldn't that be kind of connected to what you're doing with, you know, making your challah bread, taking that time, you do it once a week every Friday? Isn't that kind of in the same vein?
Absolutely, it's in the same vein. You've really touched on something. And doing activity with intention and being mindful is really, really healthy. And it's important to be aware of that. And it doesn't matter what you do, i.e. you choose to do an hour walk and I choose to knead dough and my mom is a gardener. I mean, you pick your activity, but you have to have an activity, I think, for these reasons that we're talking about.
Yeah, because the world's going kind of crazy, and it can go crazy if you let it. I mean, you do have a choice here.
And actually, that's one of the most amazing things. I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because along those lines, I want to just get in that one of the incredible things I've learned is this idea of community, and particularly because I agree with you that sometimes I think the world is going a little crazy. What I love to think about on Fridays when I'm making the dough is that there are people all over the world on Friday making challah. Yeah. And I feel a little more connected. And then I think, well, maybe the world's not so crazy. Maybe it's okay because I know that Meredith is making dough in New York, and I know that Miriam is making it in Tel Aviv, and I'm making it in LA. And, you know, it doesn't feel quite so crazy because it's easy to go there. You're right. It's so easy to go into that place.
Yeah, because it's in your face. It's on the radio. It's on the television. It's in your face all the time. And now with social media, it's even crazier. And if you look at it, if you understand numbers, you know that most of the people aren't crazy. You have a handful, that's for sure. I'm not going to name names. I'm just saying that the world can look to be crazy because those in the limelight are in the limelight, but the majority of the people are sane and giving and loving. And it's easy to forget that. But now baking bread, and it could be like your mom is into gardening. I can go there. There's a thing where people actively love. They bake bread. They garden. They clean house. They do things that is what they need for them, and it's an expression of love, no matter how you look at it. And that is bigger than the limelight.
That's interesting. Yeah. Dr. Ricanati, with this, where did this start for you? Because, you know, when you think about doctors, right, you watch what's the TV shows, and, you know, Dr. Jackie tells us, it's not true. That's not what happens. You watch this and you realize that, doctors, dentists, lawyers, you look at everyone thinking, okay, you've got to be they're going to be the best in their field, right? You're going to be the best at your own care, right? And yet I know most of my friends and anyone that I know in that field, it's just as tough to find balance. What was it for you that got you into baking bread and kneading the dough and making challah?
Exactly. So about 10 years ago, I was really overwhelmed, and it got to the point where I actually thought it was okay to jog in place in my bathroom to get the 10,000 steps that I was recommending every day to my patients to get. And the American Heart Association recommends 10,000 steps a day, and so I thought I should do that too, obviously, if I'm telling patients to do that. And it makes sense. I love that recommendation. I still recommend it. I think it's wonderful. And I had a pedometer that I would wear, and I don't know if you've ever tried to count steps, but it's actually hard to get 10,000 steps. You have to really think about it. And so I didn't often get the 10,000 because my job was mostly sedentary. And so sometimes at night, once the kids were in bed and the dishes were done and the toys put away, I'd literally run in place in my bathroom. It's the most absurd thing in the world. And luckily, at about this time in the fall, about 10 years ago, a friend of mine called and we were chatting, and she suggested that I bake challah. And it was such a simple suggestion, except I'm not a baker. I certainly then wasn't a baker. But she kept talking, and it sounded kind of cool, actually. It sounded like I could maybe do this. It's actually really simple. The recipe that's in the book is the same exact recipe that she gave me 10 years ago. I have not varied it 1 ounce, and I made it. And that's what started me on this completely different path to just stopping once a week. And it was really easy to get hooked because it felt great to be present and to slow down and just take a breath.
Well, I can see why I got you going into it because number one's a challenge, right?
Yeah,
reading your book,
very much.
She's a lady of challenge and passion and fire. I'm going to do this. And so, putting, making bread, slowing down, but getting your fingers dirty. And I think that's the key is your fingers are not necessarily dirty, but they're in the dough. So I think that's why, a lot of people like to get their nails done because they can't do anything for a while because the nails have to dry. But, I don't know. I haven't done that since I was a teenager. But it's really interesting doing this. And what I do want to go back into is telling everybody what challah is and teaching people what that is because not many of us may not know about what kind of bread this is and what it celebrates and means.
Absolutely. So challah is a traditional bread that we make on every Friday night for the Jewish Shabbat, for Friday night for the Sabbath. And it's been made for thousands of years. And normally it's a braided bread. And you'll see it in bakeries and grocery stores, etc. And then on special occasions, such as the Jewish New Year, so in the fall, usually September, October, at that time, for example, I'll make a round challah, which signifies the continuity or continuation of life, that it's a new year. So sometimes you do see different shapes. And you'll also sometimes see different flavors. I tend to make plain challah, and I had thought that this was perfect because it allowed me to be in the moment and be present. I wouldn't have to worry about all the different flavors, the chocolate chips and the raisins and everything. I have to say that in the last few weeks or last few months since the book has launched, and I have met so many wonderful people who have told me their fabulous challah recipes that have different flavoring, I'm starting to rethink. Maybe I should try something new. But I do tend to make plain challah for the most part.
You're in the zone.
It is fun to just throw something else in there and
absolutely.
Mix it in with the pot. Just to see, one new ingredient at a time.
Right.
And experiment. See, do you like it? Do you not?
Yes. It's super fun.
Yeah.
But there's also this balance, there's routine and ritual, right? So there's a routine that your body almost gets to know. And I wanted to ask you about that, being a physician. When your body knows you have 3 meals, right? Does your body kind of know, now we get to have balance at this point, so it's okay? Does your body physically start to understand?
I absolutely look forward to this every week. I absolutely start to look forward to it every week, and it gets easier. That there's this whole concept of neuroplasticity, and
Yeah.
you can affect what you do. Like that there's a growth mindset, and we're not fixed individuals. And I wasn't a baker 10 years ago yet, and I didn't have a way to manage my stress yet. But I was able to develop that, and the more you do that, the easier it becomes, because you're strengthening a neural connection, literally on a sort of biochemical level. And so the first time I made bread, obviously it wasn't very easy, and the second time it was probably a bit easier, but it still wasn't really something I could do without the recipe, certainly. But now I make it wherever we are on Friday, and I never bring a recipe with me. And to your point, it's just become something that is that I can do and that I look forward to doing. And I know that no matter how stressed out I might be, I'm going to get that moment on Friday when I can just be at the kitchen counter, and it's wonderful.
There was a time in the evolvement of mankind where we didn't have the Pyrex glass measuring cup or the plastic measuring cups, where we used our hands to measure. And once you're comfortable with the recipe and you really know it, and then you can just use your hands. It's really fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to try that. I'm still using
No, because it is really interesting, because you will even notice the difference in different flours and different brands of flours, like
for sure. That I agree with. That I agree.
Yeah,
you can feel it in the texture.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's more like
baking is a science versus cooking is still, but
flour,
baking is a science.
Apparently, Wonder Flour has been steamed and done all this, and so it's like lighter, and you when you go from like I'm going to say real flour to other flour. One's heavier and holds in your hand, and then when you go to Wonder Flour, it's like all light and fluffy and la la la, and then you're like, okay, now I'm not sure. I better get the measuring cup.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
When you look at that, I mean, because now it becomes this thing. It's like it's interesting because it becomes your thing, and then you start to like delve off, and like you want to just kind of keep to your traditional style, right? That's who you are. That's what your balance is, and everyone's going to have their personality to what they do with challah.
Well, I'm just thinking back to we lived in Africa, we lived in Mexico, and we watched people just grab things with their hands without measuring cups, and they knew.
Yeah, but baking to me, like from my background of baking, like I need help.
Well, measuring cups are good for that.
I can do but you know what happens with spices and me. So want me to have the measuring cup.
I keep saying fingers, not hands.
I'm with the doctor here. Here. We need it's a precision, right? We need that. But it to me is very interesting because there is a science to it, and that's kind of I wonder about that with you getting into this. That's also connects to your science roots in this as well, even though it's this pleasurable thing and you're looking forward to it, and you get to be Catwoman.
Oh, but it's a chemistry experiment in the kitchen. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And I'm proofing the yeast, and I'm watching that grow and bubble. And
it is the yeast. The yeast is cool. That's fun.
Very.
Yeah.
I buy it in bulk now, which I like. And,
Fleischmann's, yep.
No, I think of yeast as when I was a kid in science class, we did sea monkeys and the little twirly thingies that you put in the water, and all of a sudden they were alive and swimming around. And I think of yeast like that. It's alive, but it's not. But
it's.
I know, it's kind of crazy. You start with this little thing, and then suddenly it blooms, and it's beautiful, and it makes the bread. It's really. But it also teaches me patience. Every week I have to stop because the problem is I'm not patient by nature, but you have to be if you're going to make bread and you're going to make it with yeast, because first I proof the yeast, so I have to wait, and then I need the dough and I have to let it rise, and I have to wait. So I get this lovely opportunity every week to be reminded, because I forget, that it's okay. Like, just wait. It's okay. And it's a lovely life lesson.
That's so interesting because everybody I know in your field has this fiery passion and then, has good bedside manner. I don't know if to say that term, but you know what I mean, knows how to communicate with patients. Sometimes some don't, but they're brilliant, yet has this fire because that's what gets you through to go through college, go through all of, how do you do what you do? It's amazing, what doctors do blows my mind. And it's always changing, the field and science and medicine, everything's changing all the time. And it's just not, a passive pace. So you have to have that fire, you have to have that passion. But then how do you calm down? And that's what, at the beginning of the book, you talk about this, like the yeast being this little thing and then it grows. In the book, you go through, you're really getting into studying medicine and becoming a doctor and working on a body and learning, And I'm like, wow, this is crazy cool. I can't wait for Nancy to read it because she'll love it. It's like anything,
great.
With, looking at organs and a body and everything. And then you have the uterus in your hand. And I always thought, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I always thought of like a uterus as a big bag. I don't know why, because it's holding a baby. I can't help it, but it's just always
because you think a child's coming
But I
out.
never. But reading her book made me realize that I did have this mental image of a uterus as like a sack, like the embryonic sack. Here's a sack, and then you're like, here's this, that's
gosh.
Sorry, but it's true. And, like, it was an anatomy lesson, but you were talking about this is what everyone's fighting over. And, like, that's where I find that your book is about this balance. Like, I want to say braided and balanced. That's what I'm going to call it.
I like it.
Yeah. I mean, tell me about that. I mean, were you freaked out, like, learning about bodies and cutting them open and stuff? Like, seriously?
No, I loved my anatomy class. I was...
Really?
It was so much fun to actually see what was in the textbook in real life. I still get a kick out of it when I think about it. I mean, the fact that, like, we opened up the cadaver and the heart looked just like the heart looked in the textbook.
That's crazy.
I mean, of course it would.
Wow.
And obviously, I mean, I sound sort of silly saying it, but I was sort of surprised by that. And to see the muscles and the nerves and, I just found it so beautiful. I studied art in college, and so I spent 4 years in college learning how to see, which actually I think was brilliant in hindsight.
Wow.
It was not, I didn't plan that. But to learn how to look at things and how to see, and then go to medical school and have a class like anatomy where you have to look and you have to see. It all came together really, really well.
Yeah, because there's a perspective. I went to art college, and I've spent a lot of years just being an artist. So I get what you're saying, but now this is new to think about it like going into a body.
Yeah, I always said that.
There was that movie, The Incredible Journey, where people went down the blood vessel and floated around.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Well,
but that was like years ago.
I think that it is an art because it is like this masterpiece that we have as a body, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what's interesting too about the mindfulness. When you think about the challah and you're baking this bread, you get into the braiding of it. Like this isn't just baking a loaf of bread. You're braiding the top of it. Like now you're learning this. I remember getting into, and I had a jewelry business years ago, but I was making jewelry and not any fancy stuff, but it was I actually got into a point of making jewelry that was macrame. We said macrame here in this country.
Macrame. Macrame there.
Anyway, and I got really into it, and I'm thinking about that it's kind of like the challah, like Nancy said, like knitting, where you're in a zone. And I got into that, and I was eventually like, okay, we'll have one bead, and that's it. I'm into this. I'm going to make all these crazy designs, like dream catchers and all kinds of things. So I wonder about that. But it is true about this art. When I look at the body, there's this art. It's a masterpiece, but at the same time, even baking bread, they call it the culinary arts for a reason. You're braiding. Is that part of it for you, too?
Right.
Not just the kneading, but the braiding part and making that top right?
Yes, and I want it to look just right.
Mm.
You're up.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
you're definitely. And then I get to, our daughter coined the term paint, but then when I put the egg wash on the top,
Yeah.
and to give it the shine. And I love the paint brush, which is actually just a pastry brush, but I'm obsessed with the one that I use now, and I think it's fun.
Okay, so there's 6 ingredients. Okay, so tell us
it.
the 6 ingredients that goes into making challah.
The 6 ingredients are salt, sugar, flour, yeast, oil, and egg.
It's so simple.
Simple, and
It's
so
so
people
simple.
can afford to make this, right? So this is
Yes.
one thing
yeah.
too
Yes.
that we
Yes.
need to talk about, that people can afford to do this, and you don't have to be of Jewish faith to do it either, right?
No, not at all. In fact, actually, it's been really exciting and fun. The number of people who have read the book, commented on the book, and sent me pictures of the challah that they've made who are not Jewish. This transcends that. This is just about being present and being mindful and being spiritual, and that crosses all boundaries. So it is a very accessible activity, right? It's so much fun. Absolutely.
It is. And you know, it's like it's a mantra almost to me, like it's a repeated experience, because you sort of know the outcome, but you don't really, especially if you have a new kind of flour, a new oven, different place.
Oh, absolutely. And it depends on the weather that day and the water. Yeah. It's never quite the same. And I never really know until that night when I serve it. Yeah. Was it a good batch?
Yes,
I know, work? But you know you've done the basics, and so you're stalwart with, I did the basics. The foundation structure is there, so the rest is up to whatever.
We interviewed Chris Atwood, and him and his past wife, ex-wife, I should say, Janet Atwood. They wrote a book about rituals. This is years ago. We did about 5 years ago, I think, maybe 4 years. And they talked about the power of ritual and how athletes and performers and, all these people that we look to all have a ritual. If a sports person's going on the field, they will have a certain song that they tune into. Mm-hmm. And so I was going to just say, like, this power of ritual, there's a mindfulness that comes with this, but the power of ritual, we were touched about, like, you're looking forward to it.
I think it's the most important lesson I've learned. It's just exactly, having this meaningful ritual is probably the most important lesson I've learned.
And it can change.
Because you can focus.
Yeah, that there's this power to it where you're like commanding your body, like your body and you are having this conversation in a way with that, and you're not like saying, "Hey, body, I'm going to have, I'm going to make some bread today," but there's this there's this connection that happens, and when you said like it is never the same every time. That's the same thing. We take our 1-hour walks in the morning. We go every morning. And sometimes you have this amazing sunrise, and because we always try to go at that time. And sometimes here you start to realize the birds, these specific birds are coming in from migration, or you start to see things that are familiar, and there is always something different. There is always something different to see, even if you take the same path. Right. Every single day, there is always something different. So I think that's what's so beautiful about it, that mindfulness still has surprises. And I think that's what sometimes people don't understand about mindfulness and doing these things, that they think, oh, mindfulness, you're just zen and you're just, in a blah, blah land, that actually surprise comes from mindfulness.
Yeah, I think you're actually more open perhaps to being aware to the new possibility.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're aware.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not notice on your walk if you weren't actually aware. But because you are, I think in that mindful moment, you're seeing so much more. I agree with you completely.
Absolutely, because you're not thinking about 20,000 things. Like when you get back and you have to go to work, now you're in that world where you're, hit on all sides by all sorts of things. The worst thing is like emails coming in. If you don't turn the sound off, it's ding, 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 ding. It's like, oh, my God, really? Seriously? Do I have to hear it? No. Shut. you know,
we have the power to say no.
Exactly. You turn the sound off. I recommend it to everybody. Or it could drive you crazy. It's like, oh, instant, everything now. Now you go on a walk. No, I'm on a walk.
That's it. I'm kneading the dough. I'm Catwoman.
Kneading the dough. Yeah, and I'm not doing
I like
it
that.
with a cell phone there or a tablet.
No, because you
can't. You
You
need
can't.
the
You
dough.
Yeah. Pay attention to the yeast.
Right. It's a really powerful, healthy behavior. You know, I'll go back to what I said a while ago. It doesn't matter what. I mean, for me, it's the kneading of the dough, and I think it hits so many things. It's wonderful. But I don't care what your meaningful ritual is. I just care that you have one, because we live in a stressful world, and we have to manage stress. You know, stress can make us sick. It just can. And we. I mean, I say that as a doctor, and I see it at work. But honestly, we all know that. We all either ourselves or we see it in ourselves, or we know others who, stress can make us sick, and we have to find ways to manage it. And having meaning and ritual in your life and living with intention is such a great and accessible to everyone way to start.
Do you think we actually believe it? I mean, I agree with you that stress causes illness, but I think we mentally go, yeah, it does, but I don't think we really believe it.
Most people, you're probably right, may not believe it until they actually get sick.
See, that's the problem.
Somebody in their life, right? Unfortunately, many things we often don't realize until sort of after the fact.
Okay. What about anxiety, right? Is anxiety tied to stress with that?
Absolutely. And honestly, these behaviors, particularly tactile behaviors. So whether you like to knit or garden, or maybe you're a potter, or in my case, I like to knead dough. But when you do something with your hands, there's actually a whole body of research that's been shown that it decreases anxiety, et cetera, and stress. And it's a wonderful way it's a great antidote to dealing with that.
So anxiety, because I think people keep swallowing it and keep going, you know what I mean? And then one day they freak out, or sometimes they take their life. I've seen that, and I wonder how much we lose someone that we love suddenly, and we wonder, how did that happen? How did we not see those signs?
I think that for many of us who have a lack of meaning in our lives, it can be exacerbated by anxiety and stress and feeling overwhelmed. And while baking bread obviously is not the complete antidote to that by any means, it certainly can help to have some behaviors in your life where you can be more mindful and slow down and be present.
I agree with you, and I'm so glad you're on a show with us right before Thanksgiving. I know this will be featured in our New Year magazine, but through the holiday season, people really go a little nutty.
Yeah, they do.
And tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Nancy and I are going hiking in the park.
I can't wait.
I love that.
We want to go see the sunrise over the saguaros. It's like you can't beat that, because to me, I get euphoria over that. And to me, if I'm going to have a really good addiction, it's going to be that. It's going to be the euphoria of a sunrise over a saguaro or wherever in nature. There's like a thing that happens, and I think that when you take these moments and it kneading the bread, there you get to when you said about tactile, you get to work through things. Whereas sometimes where meditation is so key and it's important, it's a good thing to be able to do, but you have the monkey mind, and and it's just not
right. It's hard to slow down enough sometimes. Right.
You don't have that ability, and so I think this is where what you're doing it brings in it brings this way of meditating.
But it's actually reconnecting with your body in a weird sort of way. Like when you're kneading dough and there's a yeast bubble in there, you feel it. You're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's reconnecting like your hands to your mind.
Yeah. I like this tactile
That's
part.
That's a great point. I like that.
Yeah, the tactile part takes away the monkey mind chatter, doesn't it? Because why walking works because we're stepping.
It's like when you're a potter and you're working with clay and you have a mindset of a design and then there's a bubble in the clay. It's like that. It's like a reconnection with the thing you're working on. Your hand is now connecting with your mind.
Like this. How did challah come about? Like on like it become like a traditional bread? Like this is going to be served every Friday.
Well, years and years and years ago, like thousands of years ago, it was the bread that was offered at the temple. And now there is no more temple in Israel. The second temple was destroyed thousands of years ago. And so challah is it's actually a symbol. So on Friday night, first of all, there's the mitzvah, which a mitzvah is a commandment. And so there's a blessing and a commandment to make challah. And then the second mitzvah that goes along with it is that when you actually make the challah, I thought this was so beautiful, by the way. When I learned this in Israel about 5 years ago, I never knew this before, but this beautiful ritual of when you're making the dough, you actually take off a piece about the size of a walnut or an egg, and you wrap it up, and you say a special blessing, and you throw it away. And then you go on, you braid the bread and bake it. But what you're doing then, what that all means is that's the symbolism for the offering at the temple. And it's an opportunity to remember from where we came and to say another blessing, which I think is so cool. In fact, I love the fact that throughout the whole making of the challah, there are multiple touch points through the process where there's an opportunity to have a blessing, if you will. And so, for example, when you start out at the beginning, before you actually make the dough, so when I've pulled out all the ingredients, I've got everything set up on the kitchen counter, then I get a moment to stop and think, okay, whose merit am I making this in? Why am I making this bread today? And sometimes it's just me, myself, and I at the kitchen counter, and maybe I'll make it that week for one of my kids who was studying for a test. Or maybe recently I had a relative who was sick and I made it in their merit. What's really cool is when I make it with other people. So, for example, 2 weeks ago I got to make it with 25 women, and I was up in the Bay Area. And we went around and sort of saying who were we going to make it in the merit of. And it was really powerful to hear who everybody was thinking about. And it's a great way to suddenly get very close and deep and connected with everybody else in the room. But I love that opportunity to just stop, and I always say it out loud because I have found that, as with other things in life, if you say something out loud and you say it with intention, it's incredible what happens when you put something out in the universe. I used to just say it in my head, but I say it out loud now. So I think it's great that there are all these different, sort of steeped in history, there are all these different opportunities for blessing and ritual throughout the whole process of making the bread.
I love that because I think when you say it just in your head, it's almost like you're hiding.
Right? That's what I finally realized.
You're saying to the world, this is what I'm doing. I'm making this bread for.
I love that. And you have intention.
I'm going to do that from now on. When I make dinner, I'm going to make it for somebody.
Yes, do it.
But there's an intention, right? People always say, my intent is this. But then when you're making the bread and kneading the dough and thinking about it, you're actually putting intention into action.
Exactly.
That's the difference. Then just say, I want, I wish, I hope. This is intention with action. So now elbow grease is going into it. You're moving energy forward. It's awesome.
I really like that.
I know she's going to make bread again now.
Yeah, I know. I love making bread.
It's all about
I haven't
bread.
done it for a while, and I need to.
I know. You're going to love the book. I'm telling you.
I know.
I'm excited for you. You're going to have to send me a picture when you make next time you make bread.
Oh wow! I want to see her braids because I know it's going to be something funky, man. She's going to do something different.
But this is so like the braids are so medieval.
Okay. Okay. So
I love it.
Now listen, I have to bring this up. You're a physician. Isn't eating white bread a bad thing for us? Are we allowed to have it once a week?
No, I love that you brought that up. That's my favorite question. I am asked that question every week. How, and for goodness sakes, could I write a book as a physician about white bread? I love that question. So let me answer that question. First and foremost, the book is as you now know, is obviously not just about white bread, but about ritual, etc. And then taking it specifically to the white bread. Yes, we should not have a lot, I think, of white flour, white rice, white pasta, etc. Because most of it is converted to sugar, and that can cause a whole host of problems in our bodies. With that said, I did try, and I write about this in the book, I tried, therefore, to make whole wheat challah, but I didn't realize that I should have tried a different recipe. And I tried this recipe, and I tried to convert it, and it was actually awful. And I learned a wonderful lesson through the experience of that perfect is the enemy of the good, and moderation is great. So if I have a couple pieces of challah a week, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. And it's a great reminder. Because I forget, and it's a wonderful weekly. I get this opportunity every Friday. It's okay. It's okay. You can have a piece of white bread. The world's not going to stop spinning. It's okay. And
we get champagne on Sundays. That's our ritual.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And
I
get
that's
it.
great.
And we know
I really
it's
like
complete
that.
sugar, and we know that it's sugar because we're always on a hike. And hummingbirds find us as soon as we pop that cork.
Wow,
they know.
That's interesting.
There's a yeast thing with that too.
No, they
know
it. I mean, it's true.
See,
it always happens.
There's something about yeast. There's something,
but they smell it, and then here they come.
They come. There's something
and we're all
magical.
like, cheers.
Yeah, they're the symbol of infinity.
Exactly.
They're the symbol of infinity, and like you're talking about making the round challah, and I'm still trying to train myself to not say challah. I just keep wanting to say it's challah. I just do. But it's really, to me, this is so cool. I mean, this is just such a cool story, and I think now everybody, like for the holiday season, you got to go get the book. You got to go get it. It's Braided-A-Journey-of-a-Thousand-Challahs. And you can go on Amazon, but go also to Dr. Ricanati's website, housecallsforwellness.com. And before you go, two things. One, housecallsforwellness.com. You have this awesome video on your site talking about the different houses, rooms in the house, and are you wearing high heels? Like maybe you aren't getting your 10,000 steps in, and talking about things like dental health and heart health. So you really go and teach us about life in our home and just little things, that mindfulness, again, that can improve our lives, just little things that we do.
Yeah, it's so simple when you start actually paying attention to what's around you. To just make a different choice. And maybe you're getting headaches and you didn't realize that your hand soap was perfumed. And that transfers every week now when I make bread, and I have to stop and be mindful. So it runs for the same thread runs through what I do.
Mindfulness. It's really cool. It's about paying attention and realizing then you can say no to certain things as well. Before you go, now you're going to have a challah making party. And you can invite 3 people to your challah making party, okay? They can be alive or passed on, just so you can knead the dough. You could be in silence, but you're going to have some chit-chat time before, after, during, whatever you want to do. But who would those 3 people be? That could be someone that you've always wanted to sit. It could be Leonardo da Vinci, and you could sit down and say, like, dude.
That would be cool, actually. I wasn't going to put him on the list, but you know what? I think I should put him on the list. That would be totally
wow, you
cool.
got him there.
I mean, talk about art and science, right?
Yeah, right.
He would
That's
be amazing.
True.
Yeah.
He would be amazing. Okay, he's one. Gosh, this is such a fantastic question. I have not been asked this yet.
I've never asked anybody about making challah, 3 people challah. We have other questions like that, but this is good. I'm going to start doing this now.
Like it.
I know. Yeah. I like this. I really, really like this. Well, I would put him. I think I would put, I'm going to go a little bit out there. I just, 2 weeks ago in the Torah, so every week there's a different story in the Torah that we read. And 2 weeks ago there was a story about Sarah, one of the original matriarchs. And there was a story about challah. I mean, the timing was so wonderful. So I think actually she was blessed in her tent, and her challah was always warm, and I would love to know more about that. So we'll put Sarah and Leonardo da Vinci, and then I think in today's world, I would throw in Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So we can have a modern, right, a modern and a modern woman, an ancient matriarch, and Leonardo.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Right on. And that's so interesting, too. Leonardo, he had one of the oldest vineyards in the world as well. Just going back into the science of wine and where wine came from, he had one of the oldest vineyards ever.
You have to have yeast.
I know. This, again, we're back to the yeast. But Ruth Ginsburg, I love this. And Sarah, I love this. And Blessed in the Tent. Like, you can't beat that.
No, I love it.
Right.
I love that.
It's incredible.
I know. This is cool. Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you and your family a wonderful Thanksgiving. Happy Hanukkah as well, and holiday season.
Thank you.
Everybody, Braided-A-Journey-of-a-Thousand-Challahs. It's on Amazon. Go to housecallsforwellness.com. Also, Dr. Ricanati, Beth-Ricanati is on Facebook, and she's on Instagram, so you can keep up with her there, and her Instagram posts are awesome. Very, very positive, and just like these nice, mindful messages out there to keep your day happy. And everyone, we want to thank everyone for joining us here on Big Blend Radio, and thank you to today's sponsor, FamilyHistoryExpos.com. Holly over there, Holly Hansen, the Gen teacher, for sponsoring today's show. This is definitely a family history, right? This is family tradition, right? That goes down from family to family. Do different families have different challah recipes like that they pass down?
I'm sure they do. Oh, I'm sure they must. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us again. And you can keep up with our shows at BigBlendRadio.com and the magazines at BigBlendMagazines.com. Best thing to do is to sign up for our newsletter, and once a week you'll get either a magazine or new articles or recipes or interviews. And we're going to close the show with a song called Recipe because
I know.
Hey, we have Dr. Ricanati on here, and the whole song is so awesome. It's about the recipe for life. So I figured there's no perfect song other than this one for you. And it is from Sam Yannis, and you can go to his website, samyannis.com. That's LLANAS, samyannis.com. It's from his latest album, Return of the Goya. The Goya guitar, part 1, and you can also hear his interview with us on blendradioandtv.com. So here it is, Recipe. Thanks so much for joining us, Doctor. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You take care. Here it is, Recipe.
Oh, when the sun comes up and there's something